Let's talk about the new oil for Africa, and that they say is data. They say it's the new oil, but I don't know if it can bring in the FX or it has already started bringing in the FX. We have Stephen Odua, data analyst, joining us for this conversation. Hi, Stephen. Good afternoon and welcome to the program. I think you're on mute, so I didn't hear that, but I'll just assume that you would unmute yourself and tell us more about this. It's no longer a new one when they say that data is the new oil. Has it started giving us effects on the continent?
Sorry, I didn't get that question.
You guys say that data is the new oil. Oil gives us effects on the continent. Has it started bringing in effects?
Basically, when we say that data is the new oil, what we're trying to say is that it sort of highlights how valuable data has sort of become in our world. But for us to understand it, we have to go deeper. So to go deeper, we think about crude oil, how it has no value, so to speak, in its raw state. Then for it to get value, you need to refine it into petrol, diesel, plastics, and so on. So in the same breath, you can say that data is exactly the same thing. You say raw figures would mean nothing to you until you sort of clean them, process them, and then extract insight from them. So a typical example was during the COVID-19 pandemic in Nigeria, the Lagos state government used data from hospitals. They also used contact tracing tools and then local reports to sort of identify areas with rising infections. And this allowed them, so to speak, to deploy mobile testing units and health resources where these resources were needed the most. And typically, that's what refining data looks like. When you um, refine it, it becomes intelligence. And then you also see this with, let's say, companies like Jumia, where they use customer data to understand what people in different regions are buying and at what point they want to buy them. So this insight helps them make decisions on logistics and marketing. So without that refined data, basically they'll be operating on guesswork. But one thing that is even more important in this discussion is that oil is finite. So we know we have our reserves. After some time, the oil is gone, and once it's gone, it's basically gone. That's the end. But for data, whereas for data, it keeps growing, and then when you use it well, it creates even more value. And this is what makes data not just a new source, a new resource, but potentially a more powerful one, especially if we use it responsibly and then share it wisely.
So, I mean, 2 days ago, we got the rebased GDP for Nigeria, and we saw services, producing or contributing a whole chunk of it, of the GDP. Where does data use, gathering, where does it come in to help us um, broaden or increase these benefits from especially the services sector, since we see our strength there now in the bid to diversify Nigeria's economy?
Okay, so basically, when you talk about diversifying Nigeria's economy, it's not just an economic goal. For Nigeria, basically, it's more about survival. And we've seen what happens when oil prices crash. You know, when it crashes, budgets suffer, projects stall, and then ordinary people feel the impact. But when you talk about diversification, it can't just be a slogan. It has to be strategic, and then that's where data and then AI plays a major key role. Let's take agriculture for example, right? Farmers now have access to platforms that use satellite data and then weather models to give them advice on the best time to plant and then harvest. And then there's a company in Nigeria called Crop to Cash that is actually doing great work by helping farmers access financing using data on their past yields and farm activities. And this has made it easier for banks to trust small farmers who don't have traditional collateral. And then when we move on to healthcare, platforms like Helium Health are helping hospitals to digitize patient records and sort of share insights securely. And then this helps health authorities to sort of track disease trends and then help them plan better. And it also allows hospitals to manage patient flow, reduce delays, and then improve healthcare. And then if we also look at education, it's another area where AI and data is of immense benefits. We look at Open States. I know for a fact that there was a pilot project that used adaptive learning software to track how students were performing. So because of this, teachers could see in real time who was falling behind and adjust lessons to support them. So you see, that's data helping to personalize education and keep more students on track.
Mm, and
Then,
there's and there's also the need to intensify data protection. We just talked about cybersecurity in Europe.
yeah, yeah, very, 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 very true. You need to also include that when you talk about strengthening cybersecurity. It's one of the important challenges because without trust, you can see that all the gains from data and artificial intelligence can quickly fall apart. And I can say for a fact that on data privacy in Nigeria, we've made some progress. For example, the Nigeria Data Protection Regulation Act, which was introduced in 2019, it basically sets a basic framework for how companies should collect and use personal data. But in reality, we actually need to do more because right now the law doesn't sort of cover all sectors strongly enough, and then enforcement is still weak. So you can compare that to, let's say, countries like South Africa with their Protection of Personal Information Act, which sets clearer rules and it has a dedicated regulator and also places strong emphasis on user content and user consent. Sorry. So beyond laws, we also need education. Like a lot of Nigerians sign up for apps and platforms without fully understanding what they are going to. So we basically need to teach Nigerians from secondary school upwards about what data privacy means and how we can protect their digital rights.
All right,
You get?
thank you. Thank you so much for that, those tips, Stephen Odua, data and AI technology analyst.
Thank you very much.